right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's NBA pre-lock show. We have a nice little four-gamer on deck, so plenty of time and an interesting slate where we can look for some interesting spots. I will be honest, last night was not kind to me. Madness, he was on Bam. I ended up getting Giddy because the DS liked him, but I think I just didn't have enough Bam and just the guys didn't show up in the right lineups at the end of the day. So it was just a tough one for me, but onwards and upwards for today. Cujo, Thomas, good to see y'all in the chat. Let's get to today's four gamer. For those of you who don't know, I'm Josiah, aka Bob226, and today's guest is TK Moss. I call him the single entry GOAT, and really the showdown GOAT is really what I call him. How are you doing, man? TK, good to have you back.
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. How do you feel about the four-game slate? Do you like it? Are you a little nervous about it? Like, what are your thoughts?
I'll say it's a lot of intriguing pieces here on this four gamer.
Okay, cool. So first game on the slate is this Thunder versus Knicks game. Best game on paper. Two teams who are competitive and are actually just good basketball teams. Tough part is these are two of the best defenses in the NBA. Knicks they have the best defensive rating right now in the league, and we know what the Thunder do on the defensive side of things. Thunder, they did play last night, but SGA did not. Today, SGA will play, so that's a little bit different from yesterday. Jalen Williams without the Y is out. The rest of these guys have all been out, so no real new injury news for the Thunder. It's just that SGA is playing tonight. So you're not going to see guys like Aaron Wiggins or Caruso or the list goes on. Jarrett McCain pop as much because SGA is here, and this will be a much more competitive game. It's hard for me to look at this team, man. These guys aren't standing out for me too much. Do you like the Thunder against the Knicks maybe more than I do because of the competitive environment?
Yeah, this game right here is a list a bit appetizing, but I would say Shea's probably my favorite guy from OKC. Just because this is a national televised game, I could see him easily come out here and get you 30 points easy. So other than that, I wasn't getting Hardenstein, but I can see him being maybe a GPP play maybe for some of you all out there. But other than that, I was just getting mostly just Shea.
Yeah, that's a good call, and I do like that Hartenstein play. He's someone I thought about a little bit earlier, and I didn't end up pulling the trigger on him before the show, but I will now. And one thing I like, too, about this matchup for Hartenstein is he's a little bit cheaper. We're paying a premium for a guy like Chet at this point. He's priced as if SGA is not playing. And Hartenstein, he has a little bit of a softer matchup with Mitchell Robinson being out for the Knicks. So things are a little bit easier from a defensive perspective. We do need his minutes to be there. This is his first game back. We have him projected for about 24 minutes. So that's fine for his current price tag. He does a lot while he's out there. So we just need to make sure he gets every single minute. And he has to be as productive as he typically is while he's out there. I will put a 15% min on him. Make him a little bit of a pre-lock show leverage play. I like that call, man. That was good. And then SGA, I have a 30% min on. He's just a stud in a close competitive game. I think that was good to highlight that this is a nationally televised game. We've seen stars see more consistent minutes in spots like that. And SGA is the guy we really always just care about his minutes. And the other reason I have a 30% min on SGA is with a lot of these stars and studs and things of that sort, I like to try and play them in soft matchups because that's when they're really going to have their big game. Some stars are kind of better and tougher matchups. I think it's just because they do more. It's not even a faster pace game. I can't say that. I think it's just because he does a little bit of everything for his team. And when the game's competitive, they tend to score more. Who knows? So anyway, 30% min on SGA. He's better in tough matchups. So I'm not overly scared about the tough matchup. It's a spot where he can still get there. And that's pretty much it for me with the Thunder. I don't like the rest of this team. I think they're just a little bit too pricey. And with there not really being a blowout narrative, it's kind of hard for me to get to some of the value plays. So it's just SGA and Hartenstein there. Other side of this game is another healthy team. The New York Knicks, they're only missing Mitchell Robinson. He's out. And so that's a boost to guys like Sohan, Huck Porty. They'll be out there and see the court, but will not matter from like a DFS perspective. These guys aren't stupid expensive, but it's really the matchup that gives us some pause. How are you kind of seeing the Knicks here?
Yeah, when it comes to the New York Knicks, like OKC is one of the best defense teams in the game. So I could definitely see people having trepidation with the Knicks. But on my dome station, I was getting some Towns, I was getting the Hart, and that was really about it. I know, like you were saying, like guys like Bridges and like Anunoby, like their prices are not too high, but this is a great defensive team in OKC, and we could just pay down to some of these Sixers. So that's about it for me.
Yeah, I just don't love the Knicks tonight. Clegg, man, rather have Maxey over SGA. I agree.
Yeah.
I prefer Maxey over SGA. I think you're thinking about SGA if you're trying to get different in your single entry line with your pay up options. So like SGA is a pivot off of Maxey, but I think Maxey's in a much better spot. And then the other way you're thinking about SGA is if you're playing multiple lineups. If you're playing more than one or two lineups, you just have to think about what, like, if you're playing one lineup, you're thinking about what's most likely to have happen tonight. Maxey going off is the most likely stud to go off. But if you're MMEing, you're thinking about, okay, who else can pop off tonight, even in a tough matchup, who's not seeing that ownership? How can I just make one spot different? And by putting SGA in there, you're doing that. We also have a ton of value on this slate. And so I do have a few lineups where I have SGA and Maxey, as actually most of my SGA lineups is playing both of them. So just a few ways you can play it. It's a gross 4-gamer. So all things are on the table. I'm trying not to rule out too much. But when it comes to what I'm actually doing with the Knicks, I don't trust any of them. I don't really think you can. Hart is your safest play.
Yeah.
He's been the most consistent, so I can agree with that. I just don't love the matchup for any of them. Brunson falls into that same category as SGA for me, where he can pop off even in difficult matchups. And so I have a 10% min on him, just making sure I'm a little bit over the field, but it's still a tough spot. Cat, I cannot stand Karl-Anthony Towns. What are you doing with Cat, man? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I was getting around the field about 18%. He's somebody that if I had to choose to be over or under on, I would definitely want to be under on him. He's somebody who's we haven't seen that upside we've seen last year. So I would be under on Towns here.
Yeah, Cat has been so freaking weird this year. I mean, we saw literally yesterday he had 50 fantasy points against Toronto, who's been a good defense. We just haven't, like you said, we haven't seen a lot of upside out of Cat. Really, even like tough, easy matchups. It's just been kind of all over the place. Every once in a blue moon, he'll tease 50 points, mid 50s. But if we look at last year, we saw multiple like 60, 70 point performances. And so we're just not seeing that same upside here. It hasn't been consistent enough. Can he do it? We know he's literally physically capable of having a good performance. He's not expensive. And so I understand the play, but I don't get the ownership. If he was lower owned, I would be tempted to make him a leverage play because he's one of those guys who at low ownership, I can understand getting leverage because of the potential of upside. But at this high ownership, we're kind of just looking at it as that's what's expected to have happen, having him around 25% of lineups at this price tag. And I don't think that's the right way to look at it. So I'm just not going to force it. He's not showing up naturally for me in the DS really at all, only in 5% of lineups. So if he pops off, it's going to be a bad slate for me. And then Jalen Brunson, I have that 10% min on. He's really the only Nick I'm forcing exposure to, but a few more do show up naturally. Like we have Josh Hart, who shows up in about 7% of lineups. Still going to be under the field, but DS likes him some. And then OG shows up in about 3% of lineups, and Bridges shows up in 1%. So I'm not full fading any of them, but I am under the field on pretty much everybody besides Brunson. Ooh, tough question, Clegg. Any low-priced Nick you like? TK, do you have a favorite low-priced Nick?
Earlier I was looking at guys like Alvarado and Shaman, but then I was just like, the Sixers got like guys cheaper than those two guys or around their price. So I was like, you know what? I'm not really on these guys. So in the end, I'll say no.
Yeah, that's where I landed too. Jose Alvarado was worth the conversation or thinking about earlier, and with just the other news we had, meh. Shaman his minutes have been nice. He just doesn't do a lot while he's out there. He can get hot. We've seen it before, but like you mentioned, I'm just prioritizing some of the other value. All right. R. Fletch, I see your question on Isaiah Collier. We'll get there here soon. Next up, we have the Hornets going up against the Boston Celtics. Hornets are my team, but this is a really low total, 214.5 and a 6.5 point spread. Not usually the type of game you're running towards when it comes to DFS, but I'm curious to get your thoughts. Charlotte, they're basically healthy. No Grant Williams. He's out. So a slight boost to guys like Sion James and Josh Green, but nothing that really matters here. The important thing is this is a really tough matchup against Boston, and so we're really looking for an exceptional performance if any of these guys pop off. Anyone stand out for you here?
Yeah, on my crunches, I was getting some Brandon Miller, but once I looked through the ownership and everything, I was like, I want to force ownership on guys like Brandon Miller, Con Kneppel. And I know this is a tough matchup, but at the same time, the Hornets has been playing tremendously lately. And it's just like, to be different from the field, I want to be over on especially those two guys. So yeah, that's what I feel about on this Hornets team.
Yeah, I was close to you. I almost forced in Brandon Miller and Con Kneppel because those are first the two guys who have shown relatively like consistent upside. But the closer I looked at it, the more I realized like this team, they've been good. We haven't seen too many outlier performances against good defenses. The only one, like we've seen LaMelo have like a strong game against the Knicks earlier this year. But outside of that one game, he struggled in some of these tough matchups. Con Kneppel, he can shoot threes for days, but we haven't really seen him crush too much in a really tough matchup. But let me double check that, make sure I'm not missing something. But the one guy who has shown a little bit of ceiling in some tough spots is Brandon Miller. We've seen him have like a 45 fantasy point performance against the Spurs towards the end of January. We've seen him have a 45 point performance against the Warriors and a 47 point performance against the Thunder. And so those are good defenses that he has done well in some spots. Whereas with LaMelo, I can only look at like a Lakers game he had in Atlanta and then that Knicks game towards the start of December. I don't love that for him. So ultimately, I just put a 15% min on Brandon Miller, just kind of betting on his potential to be able to exceed expectations in a tough matchup. And the 7,800 price tag makes it a little bit easier for him to get there, like forcing exposure there. And then outside of that, no one else really stood out just because I haven't seen these guys do it in a tough spot. So like you mentioned, though, if I'm going to bet on two guys, it would be Brandon Miller and Con Kneppel. But ultimately, I'm just putting a 15% min on Brandon Miller and calling it a day. Anyone else you want to kind of touch on or anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, since, Hornets is your team and you watch them consistently, like,
yeah,
like, how do you think, like, they match up with Boston? I know it's a tough matchup, but can you, like, can this team, like, can somebody, like, step up and play a huge game since you watch this team a lot?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about the Hornets. I think that's why teams struggle against them sometimes is because they're hard to completely shut down. Like Brandon Miller, he can do a ton with the ball in his hands, but if it's not him, it could be LaMelo, it could be Khan, it could be Bridges. Diabate really locks down the paint defensively and gets a ton of rebounds. And LaMelo is the ultimate playmaker. Like he's literally able to get the ball to everyone, no matter how great your defense is. And so the Hornets, from what I've seen, have just been a hard team to really shut down unless their shot's not falling, which can happen to any team. And they're young, and so they're not always the most consistent. So it could be the bias or the fan in me talking, but I feel like they can compete in any game. Like it's just hard to see them not do well unless the shot's just not falling. So didn't help much from a DFS perspective because all I said was it could be any of them. And then Clegg mentioned it could be Bridges. I am always super honest about this. I have no read on Bridges ever. I play him when there's one or two guys out from Charlotte, but he's someone I rarely ever get to when they're healthy, even though there is upside there. I just haven't had the best of luck trying to guess when those performances will be. Do you have a lean on Bridges?
No, it's like you were saying, like when this team is healthy, he's kind of like the lower secondary option, and I don't know. I wouldn't. I mean, I would probably. He's only 3.95% owned, so I'll probably have like 6-7% just from that standpoint. I guess that's good leverage to have if somebody were to go off on this team. Maybe Bridges step up in this game. So
yeah, not my favorite spot for him. And like you mentioned, he is like their third or fourth option. Not really my favorite play, but he's cheap and he has 40-point upside, so definitely a maybe play that I wouldn't talk someone off of. All right, other side of this game, we have the Boston Celtics going up against the Hornets. For Boston, they're basically healthy, but the matchup against the Hornets isn't soft. They're a pretty good defensive team. They rebound very well. It's a team I've been trying to avoid, honestly, from a DFS side of things here recently. But this Boston team is really good. They are one of the better teams in the NBA, at least on the East. So how much Jaylen Brown is too much is probably the right question here.
Yeah, I was over the fill on Jaylen Brown. He's on a 4-game slate. This guy can get you 50 fantasy points, and I know the Charlotte defense is good, but this is going to be a competitive game. I can see him maybe wanting to take over or whatever. And also at the same time, I can see the other side if somebody's thinking, okay, this Hornets defense is good, so let me be under the field on Brown. So I can see both ways, but he was really the only player I was getting from this game.
Yeah. Jaylen Brown's been so good here over like the last few games. He's been on a tear, really almost no matter who the other team is. He's just someone that's hard for me not to get exposure to. He's currently showing up in about 46% of lineups. Single entry is not my top priority. I do still prefer Maxey, but if you're playing multiple lineups, the domination station here at DFS Army likes him naturally. I did absolutely nothing to him, and he's showing up in, again, right around 50% of lineups, and that makes total sense to me. He's someone I wouldn't want like 60, 80% of because, again, the matchup's still tough, but he's on threes and soft matchups. And so the situation I'm kind of forced to be into when I'm looking for leverage plays is what low-owned options have slate breaking upside. You can make an argument for a lot of players who are in some brutal matchups and their ownership's not super low, which I didn't love. But then we have Keita, who's 5,500, not expensive. And last time he was out, we saw have like 50, 60 fantasy points. Yep. The upside is there. The matchup's not my favorite because, again, the Hornets are a really good rebounding team, but they can still be taken advantage of if you're an aggressive big. And we've seen that from Boosh. We've seen that from Keita. They can both be aggressive. The problem is they're just not seeing too many minutes. A 15% min gives me leverage. If he does get like 40 fantasy points or more tonight, he should end up in the nuts lineup. I don't think it's the most likely thing, but it's likely enough where I'm willing to get some leverage. So not like my favorite single entry guy or anything like that, but he's sneaky. And I like that with guys who can have ceilings. Derek White and Peyton Pritchard are too expensive for me. Shearman, I thought about, but with this team getting healthier, I don't think we have to go there. Anyone else you like here? I think we're really just kind of looking at Brown and Keita here.
Yeah, I would say like Keita. I like that leverage call, especially on the center position, 5,500. Like we were saying earlier, if Towns fell and then you go to Clinton for Portland, if he fails, like he could be in the winning lineup, 35 fantasy points, 40 fantasy points. So I like that as a leverage play. I would definitely get double the field if you're playing 20 entry or 150 or however lineups. I would definitely get double the field on him. So yeah.
Yeah. Any player in these first two games just feels absolutely terrible to click on, and that's why they're low owned, and that's why I had to do it a little bit. All right, next game. This is where things get a little bit better. We have the Jazz going up against the Sixers. Highest game total on this slate. I'm always going to try and hit that. 8.5-point spread. Not a blowout, at least with the spread, which was a little surprising, but that's because the Sixers side have some injuries as well. For Utah tonight. No new injury news here. All the same guys who have been out are out. They're going up against the Sixers. Pretty average matchup, not my favorite, but without Joel Embiid, the matchup's significantly softer. So I think that's why the spread is a little bit closer than you might have thought it would be. I'm getting some exposure to these Jazz guys. How are you kind of looking at it?
Yeah, I concur. Just from the standpoint, I'm getting Kyle Filipowski, Keontae George. I was shocked when I looked on the ownership and he was only 8% on. I was like, what? Like he's 7,700, 8% on. Like I definitely want more than that. And also like the Sixers, they played yesterday. They played today on a back-to-back. He can even if he plays 30 minutes, he can still get you 45 plus fantasy points. So I would say those two are definitely my favorite plays from the Utah team.
Dang it. Keontae George was showing up for me naturally right before the show. And so I didn't make him a leverage player or anything because he was showing up where I want him to be. But Keontae George has been my guy this season when he's healthy, and he's playing now. So I think he's someone I definitely want to make sure I have some exposure to. He played 2 nights ago, saw 30 minutes, so I'm not overly concerned about his minutes at this point. I like this spot for him. Keontae George is someone that I will have a 15% min on. We'll call him a pre-lock show leverage play too. He's cheap. I mean, not super cheap, but he's relatively cheap, 7,700 for a guy that we know has 40, 50 point upside. And we've seen that enough times this season for me not to really be overly concerned about it. I'll actually put a little bit more exposure on him. I love how low owned he is, like you mentioned. I'll put a 20% min on him and just kind of make sure I get some exposure there. Like I said, we've been playing Keontae George all year long. And the fact that his minutes are there, which was my only concern, just makes it feel better. And then Filipowski, he was the other one you mentioned, right?
Right.
I like Filipowski. I wish he was a little bit lower owned, but he's no longer showing up for me either. So I'll put a 20% min there to boost him up some. What are your thoughts on Ace Bailey, man? The minutes are there. Price tag is coming up a little at 63. We know he's not changing the world on the court with his performance here recently, but how are you seeing Ace?
Yeah, I was getting some Ace Bailey, but he's definitely unattractive to me just from the standpoint. I'd rather be way under the field on him. I know he has the upside to get you around 40, but he's somebody that if I had to take a stand today, I definitely want to be under on him.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of the issue, some people are saying sound. Sound. I don't know. Maybe we were on mute there for a little bit. But hopefully y'all can hear us now. Let me know if you can't. But I could hear what you were saying, TK. I don't like the other players on Utah. Yeah, these guys are gross. Like, they're on a bad team. I do have a 20% min on Filipowski because I like the matchup against the Sixers without Embiid, but he is pricey. Ace, I think he might not really even have 40-point upside. Part of the issue is that his good games are like 35 fantasy point performances. He did have like a 40-point game against the Warriors, maybe like in January, but it's been a while since we've seen that. And I think quite a few guys are out to make that happen. So for now, I'm like you, I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to force the issue of Ace. And then, like Clegg said, that's pretty much the only Jazz for me. I like being over the field on Keontae George and Filipowski. I have a 20% min on just to match the field because I do think it's a relatively soft spot, but we're not getting a discount. All right. This is where our money will be decided tonight. This Philadelphia team, there's no Joel Embiid, so that's why you're seeing a boost to guys like Andre Drummond and a boost to guys like Adam Bona, at least when it comes to minutes. BJ Edgecombe is out, which is why we see Quentin Grimes coming back in our lives once again. When I look back at yesterday, that was a fade Quentin Grimes spot. And it was pretty obvious because he's almost never really had any slate-breaking performances. I should have faded him yesterday. It was like right in front of my face, and I just missed it. Kelly O being out also helps Grimes up his minutes. Everything in me wants to fade Quentin Grimes tonight after he has been horseshit this pretty much most of the season, but he is facing the Jazz. He will almost definitely see 30 plus minutes tonight. Jazz have an awful defense in the paint, outside the paint, the 3-point line. This entire team has a fantastic matchup, even though they've all disappointed us multiple times this season. How are you looking at them?
Yeah, Sixers is obviously the chalk team. These guys are just so hard to get away from on a 4-game slate. I think you have to have a lot of these guys. Obviously, Maxi's arguably the best player on the slate. Grimes, he's 4,400. He's going to see tons of minutes. Man, even Drummond at 5,200. We've seen how he's not the same Drummond of old, but he can still put up a great score.
Yeah.
Man, all of them just look good. I think Barlow, I think he can be somebody who a little sneaky. If you're trying to get different, I would probably want more Barlow than the rest of the field. He's coming in around 19%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Where I understand how you're kind of seeing it. It's interesting because, again, this matchup really increases the likelihood of a lot of these guys having strong performances. I think the biggest thing I did here of these Sixers is I did cap them at 4, a max of 4 Sixers in all of my lineups. And that's this per team player limit rule I just set. And even with only 4, because without that rule, I was seeing 5, maybe 6 Sixers showing up. And even on a 3-game slate, I don't like that. So on a 4-game slate, just going to limit it some. Quentin Grimes is showing up in 99% of my lineups. Do I like that? Do I feel great about it? Absolutely not. But given the matchup, the context, and the minutes, it has solidified in my brain to make it make enough sense where I will now lock in Quentin Grimes. He's just playing the consistent minutes. I think it's a very fair question. Grimes or Payne. But because Grimes has the minutes floor and he disappointed us last night, I'm going to go back here. I'm not going to overthink it. It still makes sense to me. And so I'm just going to lock him in here. Maxey showing up in 95% of lineups. Maxey fade low-key worked pretty well yesterday. I didn't completely fade him, but we were under the field. Tonight in these spots against bad teams like the Jazz, this is not one where I'm trying to do that. So I'll just allow him to be in 95% of lineups. It wouldn't shock me if by the time we get to lock, it's more like 90, 85, but we'll still be significantly over the field. I don't like Edwards either, Clegg. Like, for those of you who have been around for a while, y'all know I don't fuck with Justin Edwards. He's someone that I usually cap. But again, against the Jazz, all of my capping rules and fears pretty much go out of the window. Maybe it's a 5 Sixers slate. Maybe I should just take off that rule too, because it is that good of a spot and they're missing their top 3 guys. But no, I'm just going to keep the 4 rule. Not going to go past that. But yeah, because of that, Justin Edwards should see plenty of minutes. Is in a soft match. I'm not going to overthink that. Watford is showing up in 50% of lineups, so I'm over the field on him too. Someone else that I usually don't love getting exposure to, but here we are. Andre Drummond, I'm a little surprised isn't showing up quite as much as he was in some of my earlier runs. He's now only showing up in, 33% of lineups, so right there at field weight exposure. What are your thoughts on Drummond? Is he someone you want to be over on tonight?
Yeah, Drummond is one of those guys where if he's coming in around 32%, I would say I would probably want to be a little bit over on him. We've seen he has upside. We've seen that he still get those blocks, but I can see the other side of it too, where you go under on Drummond. But because to win these tournaments, like you gotta find some way to be different. So if somebody want to have the field on Drummond. You saw earlier somebody in the chat said they didn't like Justin Edwards, so maybe you can be under on him. But I think at the end of the day, you just gotta find ways to be different. So I would probably be over on Drummond.
Yeah. And Brandon, I hear you cap Maxey at 50, let the other 50 be SGA. The interesting thing is because we have so many 3K options on the slate, I have a decent amount of Maxey and SGA in the same lineup. Same story with Jaylen Brown. Like, it's a lot of Maxey or Jaylen Brown, or no, it's a lot of Maxey Brown, and the other lineups are Maxey SGA. So I have a lot of value where I can actually play both studs pretty easily. And so that's one of the main reasons I didn't cap him at 50. When I thought Maxey was stopping me from being able to get to other studs, I was going to. And then I realized, I can actually still play whoever I want, even with Maxey in the lineup. So that helped me not, or at least decide to not cap him here in this spot. Let's see. And then I put a 15% min on Cameron Payne. Cameron Payne at 3,100, he should see 20 plus minutes tonight, is a really good value play in my book. Again, we have enough value and value that has safer minutes. And so that's why Cameron Payne is not seeing super high ownership. And so with that, and when that happens, I'm always going to look for that guy. It's like, okay, he's in a good spot. He's seeing more minutes than he typically would. Decent usage rate here with the other stars out and a super soft matchup, and not seeing 20 plus ownership like some of the other 3K guys. Put me in. I want to be in that situation. So 15% min on Cameron Payne, and he's showing up right at that 15% min. You can't play two players over 9K in the same lineup. It happens, man. But if that's your philosophy and that's what's worked for you, I am never going to talk someone off of that. All right. Next up, we have the Portland Trailblazers going up against the Memphis Grizzlies. For Portland tonight, we have some guys out. Denny Avdija is questionable. If he doesn't play, we should see Chris Murray start. We've seen that before. Also, just a usage increase to the other starters if he's out. We haven't gotten that Avdija news yet, have we?
I don't think no, not yet.
Okay. And then Chris Murray, who is a beneficiary if Avdija gets ruled out. If he misses, guys like Krejci, Vit, Siabus, Sissoko would see a boost. And it's a pretty solid matchup, too, against the Grizzlies. So it's not a bad spot. It's a spot we'll have to pay attention to. So, per usual, injury news in the NBA. What are you doing with Portland? These guys show up a lot, too, by themselves.
Yeah, when it came to Portland, I was getting Donovan Clinton quite a bit. Grant was showing up. I wasn't getting that much Holiday, but he's somebody that I would try to be on the field of. And other than that, that was just the three guys I was getting the most of.
Was there a Chris Murray thing where he burned a lot of people? I don't know. My memory is so short. Like I don't hold on to it usually, besides a couple of guys we talk about on occasion. But yeah, Chris Murray is someone we don't have to worry about too much. Again, these guys show up a lot by themselves. So Donovan Clingan was someone who would have been a leverage play for me if he wasn't super chalky. I actually think I did still write him up because he's someone I want to make sure I was double the field on. I like Clingan a lot. He's basically a core play for me tonight. Jeremy Grant shows up in 33% of lineups. He's someone I'll be close to double the field on. Again, just a really soft matchup. I haven't played Grant too much this season, and he's not showing up enough for me to cap him or anything like that. So I'm just fine with the DS doing its thing there. And then Drew Holiday shows up naturally in about 12% of lineups. He's been good. He's been playing solid minutes too. I don't hate this spot, but it does look like I'll be a little bit under the field, and that's just because of some of the other guards I forced exposure to, like Campaign, Jalen Brunson. He's the guard who's falling in ownership because of those changes. And then that's pretty much it from Portland. Kamara's showing up in 1% of lineups. I don't think that's super necessary on this slate, but I don't really love that play. What are your thoughts? Do you think about Kamara at all?
No, he's definitely unappealing to me on this slate.
Yeah, agreed. All right, last team on the slate for Memphis tonight. They have Santi Aldama out. We've seen this a lot already. Boost to guys like G.G. Jackson, Prosper, Hendricks. Ty Jerome is doubtful. And so boost to Walter Clayton Jr., Cam Spencer, Small. Taylor Hendricks is questionable. Also a boost in minutes if he gets ruled out to the forwards here. Think Prosper and G.G. Jackson as well. And then Coward's doubtful. Scottie Pippen's doubtful. They've been out for a while, which is why we're seeing the same names from Memphis that we've seen for a while now. Clayton, Spencer, Small. This is a team that's not in a bad spot. And so who's standing out? Who are you trying to force in?
Yeah, I was getting a ton of Walter Clayton. He's somebody who's been consistent on this Memphis team when we don't know when the minutes are going to come from.
Yeah.
I was getting Prosper a bit. Small was showing up. I think it's definitely going to come down to Taylor Hendricks being out. If he's out, I think that can secure the minutes for Prosper in these forwards. So we definitely have to look for the news on Hendricks.
Yeah. That Hendricks news is a really big deal. I did underplay it a little bit. He's been playing like 23 to like 28 minutes on any given night. And his ability to play tonight or availability to play tonight will really impact how great I feel about some of the other wings on this team. As of right now, Walter Clayton's the one I've kind of just locked in. Not literally, he's in 71% of lineups, but he's the one I felt the best about, and the DS does too. Outside of that, I'm kind of just taking a bit of a wait and see approach. It's one where I'll have to late swap if Taylor Hendricks gets ruled out. If he plays, I'll keep what I have. Javon Small showing up in about 25% of lineups. Prosper, it looks like I'll be slightly on the field at 13%. Let me see if he's someone I want to force exposure to. Yeah, I do like Prosper enough to force it. I'll put a 30% min on him, just making sure I'm over the field there. Hendricks, we don't know what we don't know. GG, I can wait on. I'll keep that 10% min there. We'll want that to go up. Probably take like 5% of the Hendricks exposure if he gets ruled out. Wells is showing up in 10% of lineups. That's close enough to field weight exposure where I'm not going to force it. And then Meshack is showing up a little in 7% of lineups, which is right there close to field weight exposure. And then Cam Spencer, who has been not my favorite Grizzly for a while, isn't showing up a lot, only in 5% of lineups. What do you think about Cam Spencer tonight?
I think Cam Spencer, I'm not really getting to him, and he's somebody I want to be under on.
Yeah.
Like I was saying before, it just comes down to the minutes, and I just don't trust the Cam Spencer, the minutes as of right now. So if I was just playing 150s, I would definitely be under on him.
Yeah. So I'm not going to force him in, but there's a lot of solid guard plays, and Cam's not the one I'm going to force in. Right? That's honestly the way it is with a lot of these teams. Memphis falls into the bucket. There aren't too many teams on the slate like this today, but we talk about it a lot. Teams that have a wide rotation and play a lot of guys. They're literally just guys on the court filling in minutes. That's their job. And that's pretty much the entire Memphis Grizzlies. All of them are seeing like 23 to 25 minutes. None of them are overly special. Besides like one or two. And so it really is just like a mixture of guys there. But yeah, that's the slate, guys. It's a decent 4-gamer. Last two are much more appealing than the first two, but the first two are where we can find some low-owned guys if you want to take a shot on them. We'll be back tomorrow. I think Madness will be with me tomorrow, and then TK will be with me again on Friday. So we're in for a good rest of the week. I wish you all nothing but the best, and feel free to reach out on the Discord if you have any questions. Peace out, y'all. Bye.